Hi, welcome to my Patreon podcast, September 2019 edition. I'm doing something different this month. Usually I interview an extraordinary, ordinary person about their lives. We talk about usually changes, transitions, things they've learned, experiences they've had, things they've learned about themselves in the process, all kinds of things. We talk about experiences in that person's life. And I'm doing something different this month. I'm going to be talking about my own life a little bit in preparation or to give you a heads up and a taste for something I am releasing next month in October called Second Bloom. And Second Bloom is stories of women, mothers specifically, who had a career or a vocation or years that they invested into taking care of kids, taking care of home, often homeschooling. Almost all the women I've interviewed were homeschoolers also. So they did that for a time. 15 to 25 years. I can't remember the exact numbers right now with everybody I talked to, but it wasn't certainly the length of a career or a job or a vocation in their lives. And then they transitioned or are currently transitioning to another type of work. They might be still at home working from home. Some of them are working out in the wider world, going to jobs, that kind of thing. But it's stories of that transition, people's stories of that transition from mother, homemaker, caregiver, home and family as the primary focus of their lives to other work and other opportunities for them. And so that's what's coming next month in the project called Second Bloom. What I am doing for this month's Patreon podcast material is I am going to be talking through the questions that I presented to the women I interviewed. That's why part of the reason I'm doing this in video and not just audio is that I'm essentially interviewing myself. I'm going to post or propose questions and then I'm going to answer them where I am at from my own experience. And I thought that would be more interesting in a video format than just listening to it. So that's what we're doing this month. And in preparation and to give you a heads up about what's coming. So the reasons that I wanted to do this project called Second Bloom, I've got two main reasons for doing this project. First off, I think these are stories and experiences that need to be shared in the wider world. And I don't see these stories out there very many places. I think I'm probably limited in what I read and what I'm exposed to and the media influences in my life. But I don't see a lot of stories about what it's like to transition from full-time homemaking, caregiving, especially homeschooling, to something else, to another career, a second career, a different type of work, work outside the home. I know these things happen, but I don't see a lot in my own life or in the media and the things I follow. And so I wanted to put some of these stories out there for people who would be interested in this. And I'm interested in these, and so I figure other people must be interested also. So that's one reason. I feel these are just stories and experiences that I want to share with the wider world and perhaps the niche world of homemaking, homeschooling families within that broader, bigger context. The second reason that I wanted to do this project is very personal and somewhat selfish, is that I want to hear these stories from my own journey and my own perspective, because this is the stage that I am in. I am at the end of the homeschooling years. We're finishing that up. I am launching young adults into the world, and I am moving into something else for my own life. I am wanting to have a second career. I am wanting to figure that out. That's actively what I've been doing for the last year, has been figuring out for myself, what am I going to do after this stage? It's been very soul searching, very reflective, very thinking about my skills and my experiences and my interests and our financial needs and all manner of things that have come into this decision-making process. And I wanted to hear from other women and mothers who have made this transition, to see what that looked like for them, in part because I'm trying to find my own path, and I glean from other people. I look and to see what other people's experiences have been like. And so I did this project as a way for me to learn, and to learn from the wisdom and experience of other people. So that's the two reasons behind doing this project, to gather some stories of this transition in women's lives, and put that out into the wider world for other people, and to hear them myself, and to learn from other people's experiences and be encouraged. And I have been, in doing these interviews, really encouraged and inspired for my own path as I try to find my way into what's next for my life. So that is what's coming next month to my Patreon community. And that's at the workshops and courses level, or maybe it's courses and workshops. I can't remember the exact title for that level of support. And I want to introduce it this month to all of my patrons, and ask myself the questions that I asked each of the women I interviewed, so you kind of know where I'm coming from and where I'm at in this process before we talk to the other people and hear from their experiences. For each woman I interviewed, I had 10 questions that I asked them. As it is when I interview anyone, I send them questions and the outline for our talk ahead of time. I don't pull anything. At least I try not to pull anything on anyone that I haven't had time to think through, because I don't like that myself. So they had these questions ahead of time. And if I didn't ask them explicitly in the interview, they had been asked in receiving that line ahead of time. So sometimes the women would answer them in the conversation we had, even if I didn't ask the question explicitly. But there was 10 questions that I went through with each person, and you will hear those when you listen to the interviews next month. I'm going to ask those same questions to myself in this video and answer them from my experience and where I'm at, and add that to the voices of the women whose interviews I'll be sharing with you next month. The first question I asked is, what is your family situation? How many kids do you have? How old are they now? In my case, so I have 3 kids. My kids are 20, 18, and 16. And the situation in terms of my involvement with them at this point is I am still homeschooling our 16-year-old. I will be done that hopefully in this next, we're in our last school year with her. The plan is that she will be done after this year, and then we'll go on to college in the Quebec system. And so that's that child. Our middle son has graduated from high school. He's got a few other things that he's wrapping up that I'm helping him with. Because when you homeschool, you don't have to finish things exactly at like June 15th or May 31st or whatever it is on the school calendar. So he has a few subjects that he's still finishing, and he needs my help with that. But he's kind of having a gap year of some studies, working, doing things he's interested in, and then applying for university in the winter to start next fall, a year from now. And our oldest is 20, and she is just starting university now. This is her first year. She is starting this September. And so my active parent, not active, I mean, I'm still an active parent to her, but my active homeschooling years with her are completely done. All three kids still live at home and will probably for the foreseeable future, because we live in a place where our kids can go to university while living at home. So that's what my family life situation looks like right now. And I still have, I would say, commitments to homeschooling commitments with my youngest, and that involves also some participation in the homeschool community with her. So there's still an involvement with her and in her community for me for the next year. But then, which is what this whole project is about, I will be done that. So that's coming up for me. The question number 2, how would you describe your work as a full-time mother? So when I ask my Second Bloom interviewees this, they've all moved out of the stage of focusing solely on their kids and home life. Some of them are still actively raising kids. They've got kids who are in middle school and high school. So they're still like full-time moms, but they are doing other work. And they had at one time been focusing solely or more intensively on the children. So this question was asking, how would you describe your work during that time? Like, what were your commitments? What did your life look like? So for me to answer this question, in my context, my mothering years, my active parenting years have also been homeschooling years, and have homeschooled my kids all the way through high school, from preschool, although we didn't like actually do any school stuff in preschool, but I was the one providing all that opportunities and experiences for them at that age. So preschool through high school. And so home has been my focus. Homeschooling has been a big focus. And then in the last 10 years, I would say 10 years, I've started to focus have energies move outside of the home in my writing, and having a blog and doing that for years, and then growing into doing some freelance writing projects. That kind of got me started. That was about 9-10 years ago. And then for a time when we lived on the Gaspé Peninsula, I was working more with my husband. We were doing online projects and we were collaborating on more things. But it was still very home-based. We were both at home together. But I was putting energies into those other things. And then when we moved to Montreal 4 years ago, I focused again for a time just on the homemaking and homeschooling, in part because where I was mentally and emotionally, I needed to do that for myself and for my kids. And also having just moved here and trying to get established and root ourselves here and find community, that was really my focus for a couple years. So that was, back to basics, just really focusing on kids and home. And then for the last couple of years, I have been working part-time as a content writer and in social media, working for my brother with his podcast, and also then starting to develop this Patreon. And it's basically I'm a freelance, so I'm a freelance writer and online content creator is what I've been doing for the past couple of years. So that's kind of been the work that I've done while I have been raising kids, taking care of the home, homeschooling. And of course, we've lived different places over the years and have had quite a few adventures. And I was a big part of making those happen and literally like moving us places and all that. So that's kind of been my work for the past 20 years. And then the introduction around 10 years ago of freelance writing and content writing. But that's been a very much a side thing for me. Family and kids and the home has been the primary focus. Question 3, what did you do before becoming a mother? So I became a mother when I was 23, and I got married when I was 20. So, and I was a student when I was married. I was in university, met my husband, Damien. We knew we wanted to have a family. And so we were thinking about when to start our family, and we decided that we would start right when I had graduated from university. So the progression there was going to university, meeting Damien, falling in love, deciding we wanted to get married, getting married. This was all while I was in university, and I also then went to university part-time to kind of facilitate all this and to work and that kind of thing. So getting married while I was in university, and then deciding we wanted to have a family sooner than later. And so I became a mother a month after graduating from university. So what did I do before becoming a mother? I was a student, basically, with part-time jobs. I worked in education, had jobs as teaching assistants and working in adult education, as well as with kids in environmental education and kind of places that kids went on field trips and doing activities and outdoor activities with them. And so that was my work experience. I did not have a career. I was a student and I was getting my education, and then I became a mother. Question 4, how old were your kids when you started the transition to non-child raising work? So I guess for me, the transition to non-child raising work, things that were not about my kids and about their homeschooling, was really when I started blogging, because I became a writer out of that. But blogging was just a hobby, and it's been a hobby of mine for 15 years. Yeah. And so it started off just as a hobby. And then I would say, let's see, my youngest was 7 or 8, when I started doing freelance writing very casually. Like it didn't even count as part-time hours, and it was kind of an extension of my hobby. So that's how old my kids were. Like my youngest was, I guess, 8. And then so I had 8, 10, and 12-year-old as I started to branch out a bit into putting myself out there in realms outside of our home. But it was very casual, and it was barely even part-time, and it was connected to a hobby. So there's not like this clear transition. So I have another transition coming up that I'm in right now, where I am going to be transitioning to something else, to be determined and to be figured out and shared once that is settled on. But so that, the question, how old were your kids when you transitioned? That transition is coming up for me, and they will be, teenagers and young adults. So this question doesn't exactly apply to me because I am in that transition, and that's the age they are now. Question 5, what motivated that transition for you? Was it a financial need? Was it a need to be a person other than just mom? Was it a desire to contribute something specific to the wider world? So when I'm asking women this question, I'm really asking about the transition that I am in right now, moving to something else, finishing this thing and moving into something else. And I'm asking them what motivated that transition for them. So looking at the current transition that I am in and this thing I'm finishing and something new I'm going to be starting, I'm going to answer this question from that perspective. So what motivates this transition for me? Well, it's that my kids are actually growing up. They're going to be done homeschooling, and it's time for something new for me. It's just the time. In addition, there is a financial need for me to transition into work that earns money. We all know that caregiving does not earn money. Caregiving as a full-time mother and homemaker does not bring money into the household. So that is an actual need that we have. That need motivated me going into part-time work almost 2 years ago now. A very definite need to contribute financially to the household. And so that was the main motivator behind getting a part-time job at that time. And it is definitely part of the need and the motivation behind my desire to have a career in this second stage of my adulthood. Also, I would say I have a desire to explore things in my life and an identity I have besides mothering and homemaking. I want to explore other things in myself and for myself, especially around the ideas that I have and my enthusiasm for learning and for studying and for thinking about things. So that's definitely a motivator also. Question 6, what is your present work or vocation, and how did you get here? So this question doesn't so much apply to me because when I'm talking in my interviews with these women, they have already transitioned to the thing that they are doing or are in that further along than I am. They're in schooling. They are working at jobs they've worked at for a while. They've just kind of already made that leap. So I don't have a way to answer this. What is your present work or vocation? It's just what I've already explained. So we'll just leave that question for me. Question 7, what are your financial goals with your work? And I don't mean specific dollar values, but more like what is the overall goals? Like what role does your contribution or my contribution make to the family finances? So this is an interesting question for me and an interesting thing to explore. Well, in part because we don't talk about money a lot. That's like one of those kind of taboo things. And I'm not trying to like dig in and talk about people's financial details of their life. But there is a reality for a lot of people in when you choose to have a primary caregiver that doesn't is not earning wages for the family, or even only part-time, and then somebody else is working full-time to support the family. There is a financial reality to that, and that's different for everybody, but it's something that we all have to navigate. We all have to figure out what will it look like for our family to earn our livelihood, and what are our needs and our desires and options within that, because we all have different abilities and we live in different contexts. So these are questions that are really interesting to me, and how people arrive at answers for their own families and situations are interesting to me. In my case, the financial goals for my work, or what I want in the future, because I'm not in that yet. The work that I do right now is just to kind of pay off extras in our life and to help with some of the extras, which right now is a debt, paying off a debt. So that's where I am right now. But for the future, how I see my contribution being is that we need money for our old age, and we need to save for that. We haven't been able to do that as a single income family for the last 20 plus years. Maybe we could have if we had had other priorities and prioritized things differently, but that hasn't been our reality. We've had priorities for adventure and for travel and for doing things as a family and that kind of thing. And so that's where we have invested, let's say, but we don't have savings for our future. And even if we hadn't have done those adventures, I don't think that that would have added significantly to our future life, future old age savings. Anyways, all that to say, I need to work for a definite and real financial need in our family. And that is to help us save for old age, and also to do things for the next 25 years of our life that fall outside of the budget that we have for my husband's earnings, which supports our family, but doesn't provide for a lot of extras. And that's what I want my work to contribute to. And those extras would be around things that are ways in which we could support our kids, travel, adventuring, and like I said, saving for when we're older and we can't work, which is not the same as retirement to me. We don't have a vision of retirement per se, but we know at some point we won't be able to work and we will need savings to take care of ourselves. That's what I'm talking about. So those are my financial goals for when I start the next, or am earning money from the next phase of my work. Next question is about loss that people experience, that mothers might experience as they leave the full-time mothering years. So it's actually kind of a longish question. I'll just read it for you. Many mothers experience a sense of loss when they leave full-time mothering years, maybe especially because of their high engagement with their children's lives. Many mothers also experience a sense of freedom, joy, excitement at the new opportunities and experiences that are presented to them. And also, if this change is initiated by a strong financial need, there can be stress on top of that. So there can be loss with the change. There can be excitement and joy with the change, and stress as well. Not just from financial, but just from change in general. What was or is, if you are presently in this transition, what is it like for you? Have you experienced grief and loss around this transition? What about the excitement of new opportunities? And did you move from one to the other, or did you go back and forth? What was your experience like around this? So that's the question. I think I ask it because I tend to experience loss around change and transition. Not everybody does, but I have this melancholic sense that accompanies change in my life. And so I have experienced those things, and I anticipate experiencing loss around some of these changes. So I wanted to know what it's like for other people. So I'll answer this question for myself. I'm not yet through this change or transition. I haven't started the next thing, but there certainly is some loss and grief at the end of the child raising years. And for me, these things are coming together, the end of the child raising and starting something new, a career, a new path for me in work. They don't line up like that for everyone. A couple of the people I interview, it's like that for them also. But some people start things while their kids are still in school, while their kids are younger, and so they're not finished raising kids, in terms of those really active parenting years. They're still doing that. And so that's their experience. And they don't go together, the starting the new thing and being done raising kids. But for me, that's what it is like. It's this finishing and starting kind of all at the same time. And so for me in this transition, there is some grief and loss around that stage of my life being done, the never being able to go back and relive the best parts of it, which of course I tend to remember the most, thankfully. I hope it's the same for my kids. And also those feelings that we get, or that I get, of regret around certain things. I feel that also during this time. So there is some senses of loss for me in this transition, but they just kind of feel natural for me. They feel just like this natural progression of letting something go. And because it's been an amazing experience and really central to my life, raising children and homeschooling them and being so involved in their lives, as I let go of it, it's like a letting go, and there is some loss there. But it doesn't feel unwarranted, I should say. It doesn't feel like in excess or that kind of thing. It just feels like a natural kind of progression to go through as you're finishing one thing. So then I also have a lot of excitement about the new opportunities and coming my way because I don't have this responsibility anymore. I do have a responsibility to contribute financially. That is a reality for our partnership. But I don't have the responsibility to educate and provide and take care of my children. And that is like a huge lightening of a load. And so I'm excited about letting that thing go. And I'm excited about than the energy that I can put into the next thing, whatever that is. I don't know what those things will be, so I have less excitement, I think, about the actual thing that I will be doing, but that I will have energy for something else and can kind of dive into something else and define and understand myself in new ways. So I'm excited about that. And these are kind of coming together at the same time for me. And so that's what it's like for me. A mix. Both and. Question 9 is, how would you say your mothering informs the work you do now? What are the main skills, attitudes, and experiences of motherhood that you bring into your current work? This is really interesting to me because mothering, taking care of children for years, caregiving, homeschooling, develops so many things in us, grows certain character traits. I mean, when I think about how much I've grown as a person through being a mother and how much I've had to unlearn and relearn, both in mothering and homeschooling, that's what I've loved about the journey, just how much I've grown and changed and developed personally. And so obviously, when we go out into other work and contribute to the wider world in some way, we are bringing things that we have developed, grown, learned in our work as mothers. And I wanted to talk to other moms who were actively out there in some context and ask them how they see mothering as informing their work. That's what this question speaks to. So I'm not doing that yet. But I'll try to answer this question in the current context of my part-time work and just my goals maybe and my dreams for what I do want to do in the world. I think for myself that mothering hugely informs how I see the world and how I see people and how I see the potential and possibility in people and how I want the interactions between people to be in the wider world. So what I mean by that is I try to bring my sense of everyone's beauty, worth, and value and their potential that has been, I feel, honed in me as a mother, because this is how I see my children and how I have wanted to see them and how I have both naturally seen them and also cultivated in myself this idea of their inherent worth and value and potential, and just all those years of homeschooling towards that. That's one of the things I want to bring into the wider world and working with other people besides my kids, is that potential, recognizing it, honoring it, seeking to develop it and nurture it in other people. So that's one thing for me. Also, the way in which I want to see change and transformation take place in the wider world. I think I do come from and bring my particular mothering experience, my mother's heart to that, in that I want people to be able to move into new things in their lives, experience transformation in their lives from a place of knowing their worth and their belovedness and how loved they are. I just I can't separate that in myself. I can't just apply that to my mothering and my children, but it's this energy, this heart of wanting to see things happen in the wider world from a place of love and safety and acceptance and nurturing, not from a place of, well, here's the high standard, here's the level to which you must compete, here's the these external, reach this bar standard. And I don't know if this is like a masculine and feminine energy thing. I don't want to say that. I don't want to jump to that conclusion. But for me, my mothering energy and heart comes from a completely different place than here's a high bar that you must reach. But here I am underneath, lifting you up and helping you see your potential and your value and your worth. So I think that is how, one of the ways for me that mothering informs how I want to be in the world and what I want to bring to future work that I do. The last question, what did you love most about your hands-on parenting years, and what do you love most about the work you do now? So I can't speak to that so much in terms of what I love most about the work I do now in terms of like the next thing I'm going to do. But, definitely what I've loved most about the focused years of mothering and homeschooling and parenting is the relationship I have with my kids and the time I was able to spend with them. Absolutely. I think that's just, I loved being with them. I still love being with them. So it's just a real sense of relationship and connectedness. And I have so many memories around that too. Just so many things that we did together when they were younger that I sometimes wish I could go back and recreate. I can't recreate those. But those are really meaningful and special to me. And I hope that they are meaningful and special to my children also. And so I just loved all the many, many moments that just were stacked upon day, upon day, upon day with my kids and the relationship I have with them because of that. In terms of what I love most about the work I do now, so just to speak to my part-time work now, I love the things I'm learning. I love in a way that the being challenged to learn. I also find that unsettling, but I do love the growth that comes from new things and trying new things, even though it's scary. It feels scary for me. And I also love supporting someone else that I love. In this case, right now I'm working for my brother, and I love supporting his goals and dreams and desires and seeing and helping him. Like I really like that. And then the work I do now with Patreon, I love the connecting with people. I love hearing people's stories. Again, it's relationship based. It's connection and learning things about people and learning things about myself in talking with people and hearing their experiences and just getting a wider and wider viewpoint and perspective on things. So that's how I would answer that question, even though I'm not doing the next thing, whatever that is. That will have its own loves that I know I will enjoy and appreciate. So that is the extent of the questions that I asked my Second Bloom participants. Their answers to these questions were so intriguing, interesting, inspiring, and encouraging to listen to. I was encouraged by every single interview I had. I was downright excited at a lot of points when I was talking with these women because of their own excitement with their experience and where they are at now, and how they couldn't have anticipated or seen being there 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So I do hope you will listen to those interviews, participate in that project with me. And this video was just to give you an introduction to that, to kind of set the stage for that, and to, I guess, also share a bit more of myself and where I'm at right now with my own life transitions and changes, to, in the same way that I was learning from other people and hearing their experiences and gleaning from them, there might be something for you from my own sharing in this video. That's the goal. That's, the hope. So next month will be Second Bloom at the courses and workshop level, and there'll be something also for my Patreon podcast level. And that's kind of what I'm working on right now, what I'm gearing up for, and the stage that I am in. So it's kind of all a bubbly ferment around that. Thanks for being here, and I hope to see you in Second Bloom and see you around on Patreon here. Thank you.